Last night, the Chancellor gave her annual Mansion House speech. Alongside that speech are a whole host of documents and reports that expand on the points that she mentions. Today, I want to go through some key areas with you. We're going to focus on the bits really that relate to your personal finances, but we will touch on other stuff. The Chancellor wants to deregulate the financial services sector. She also wants to get Britain investing. There's some discussion around pensions and ISAs, and we'll go through it section by section. I've timestamped it all below for you. But I want to start with this overall desire to get the UK public investing.
For too long, we have presented investment in too negative a light.
On page 39 of this document, it reads, "For too long, lengthy risk warnings and a tangled system of financial advice have made it too hard for consumers to even begin to decipher their options." Let's split this down into two parts. First of all, the lengthy risk warnings. This is music to my ears. I've sat here many times and said that I think the regulator puts people off investing and pushes them into cash savings, without really explaining that cash has a very real risk, which is that it fails to keep up with inflation long term typically. I think the way the regulator currently communicates risk warnings around investing, your capital is at risk, you could lose all your money. It would be like every time you get in a car, an audio message plays and goes, "Good morning, before you set off today, have you considered that you could crash and die in a tangled mess?" There's zero recognition for the fact that actually this might be the vehicle that you need to get you where you want to go. And that metaphor applies to both cars and the stock market. The paper claims that the goal is to support an industry-led campaign promoting the benefits of retail investment to consumers, including the value of investing to the economy that we all live in. Many people think that the economy does not serve them, so I don't think that's the kind of string we should be pulling on. Instead, I would focus personally on wealth generation, that cash is not risk-free, the ability to retire well, and the fact that people already do it through their pensions anyway, and that if they make a few small changes to their pensions, it will drastically improve their retirement outcomes. I would also promote investment through the child-based products. You say to parents, look what you can do for your kids with just a little bit of money. That emotional pull is just too much to resist for parents, and we can get people into investing through their kids essentially. There's a point in here as well that they hope to roll out targeted support to consumers by ISA season 2026, so April next year. What that's going to look like, I don't know. But my message to the FCA who watch my content is, go where the audience already is. Don't try and go through traditional channels that were relevant a decade ago. People are on social media, communicate there, and most importantly, while I appreciate that you're a UK regulator and your mandate exists on these shores, your responsibility is to the regulations of the UK, please understand that you operate in a global information space. If you stifle or shut down the good actors in the UK, you simply give an opportunity to the bad actors who operate outside of your jurisdiction. Crypto scammers, Ponzi schemes, and people selling day trading and FX courses.
What do you mean? I'm stealing, it's illegal.
Okay, next up is the advice piece on this. The end of those risk warnings I discussed before typically go, if you want help, go seek out a qualified financial advisor. There are around 28,000 financial advisors in the UK at the moment. So I know from conversations with financial advisors that there's a limit to how many clients they can realistically serve in a year, because of the service they want to offer them and because of the regulations that exist. Let's say that you need to do 3 days worth of work per client per year. That's 100 clients a year. The maths ain't mathin', is it? That means that we can serve 2.8 million clients a year with the current financial advisor roster in the UK. And obviously they're going to focus on the wealthier end of the market because it's more valuable to them. The people who need help, the people who need the guidance the most, are not those with hundreds of thousands or millions to invest. It's normal families up and down the country who have a couple of £100 a month to invest and they want to know how to best set themselves up. It's 21-year-olds who've just started work and are wondering, what do I do with my pension to get the best out of it? It's every parent in the UK that currently saves into a junior cash ISA because they see the stocks and shares JISA as too risky. The regulator has been doing work on advice versus guidance, and I think this should be a key area of focus to ensure that the 90% of the UK population who will never sit down with a financial advisor can at least access information and guidance on what they should do to support their families in a sensible way. Now, the key thing, though, for me is who delivers that guidance. In the Leeds reforms, which cover the financial deregulation measures that we'll cover in a moment, the Chancellor outlines that banks will send investment opportunities to savers with cash sitting in low-interest accounts for the first time. And major financial institutions, including high street banks, are backing an advertising campaign that will highlight the opportunities of investing for consumers who are able to do so. My worry really is that people don't trust banks. Any promotion of an opportunity might be seen as a sales tactic, and met with scepticism, especially because major high street banks, many of them offer really expensive or poor investment offers. I rank all of the major savings and investment accounts on my website, Financial Interest. But if you look at the stocks and shares ISA category as an example, there's not a single high street bank in the top 10 offerings. I've said multiple times, if Martin Lewis 20 years ago told the country that they should invest, we'd be in a very different place today. I know he's a consumer champion, and I know his focus is more on that side of things, but he's a national treasure at this point, I would say. The most trusted man in the UK, and he is the UK's financial educator of choice. That is what people need here, education on why investing is a good thing from someone that they trust. He should be the face of any campaign, in my opinion, and the high street banks should take a back seat. His audience, who love cash deals, cash savings, and switching, energy suppliers, are the exact people that we need to be waking up to the benefits of investing. I mean, I'm also available if the government's looking for some crap finance jokes to go along with it. But overall, this desire to get people investing, I think this is a really good thing. The Chancellor wants it to promote growth in the UK and bolster UK markets. But if this gets the UK investing, if the outcome is income for the UK population, I will be happy. Right, let's look at some of the UK-specific products now that we all use to invest and some of the proposed changes and conversation around those.
I recognise the potential for ISA reform to improve returns for savers.
Leading up to this, there was a lot of rumours about what would happen to cash ISAs. There was a belief that the amount that you would be able to put into a cash ISA each year would be slashed, all the way down to as little as £4,000. It appears that the Chancellor buckled on this point from pressure from people who thought it was a bad idea. I don't really think she can take another failed, unpopular policy blown up in her face right now, so I think she just kind of distanced herself. I personally believe, though, that the reduction of the cash ISA limit was more a tax grab than it was about genuinely getting people to invest. AJ Bell did some research that found that most of the people surveyed would just stick their money into savings accounts or NS&I products. Only a fifth said that they would invest in the UK. The UK does have a cash savings problem, but I don't think a reduction in the cash ISA limit is the way to fix it, and I think it sets a nasty precedent for future politicians to mess with yet another product that's designed for long-term saving. But unfortunately, the Chancellor has not ruled this out herself.
And I will continue to consider further changes to ISAs.
One thing that I think the Chancellor has done really poorly during her short tenure is this willingness to allow speculation to run wild. Perhaps she's testing the waters to gauge public reaction to unpopular proposals, but doing so with something as sensitive as people's retirement savings creates uncertainty and panic. People were pulling cash out of their pensions ahead of the last budget, worried that the tax-free lump sum was under threat. And speculation around ISA limits has driven a surge in cash ISA deposits. It's panic, not careful planning. Now Rachel Reeves casually says, "I won't rule out more changes." She's just effectively leaving that door open again, creating more uncertainty, more rumours ahead of the October budget. At the start of her speech, she boasted about
restoring stability.
I would love to ask the Chancellor, what stability are you providing to those of us looking to invest and save for our long-term futures by doing this? Because this constant teasing of changes and vagueness around reforms is damaging. It creates fear and panic. It's the complete opposite of the stability required to plan 30 years into the future. It also honestly creates this sense that you don't really know what your next move is. If the Chancellor appears to lack any conviction about her own decision, how can we, the British public, be expected to invest with conviction for our futures? Chancellor, please stop it. Stop it. One change mentioned in the speech is that stocks and shares ISAs will be able to include long-term asset funds, LTAFs. They're a product that allows investors to access less liquid investments, things like private equity or venture capital. Stuff where getting your money out can be tougher. It's funny to me that the UK has a cash savings problem because they perceive investing as too risky, and one of the solutions is let's give them some VC funds. I think the reality is this is more suited for sophisticated investors who know what they're getting into. There is evidence that private equity over a long period of time can produce positive returns for investors. There's some papers that I glanced at that suggest that it beats the stock market. But, VC, typically, they'll invest in loads of startups and only a couple will pay off. And can you access your money easily? The benefit of a stocks and shares ISA is the flexibility of the product. I don't know enough about these products to really comment, so I'll do some digging and maybe comment on them more if this all goes through. Okay, let's quickly look at pensions.
Pension funds and this government are united in our determination to deliver higher returns for savers and more investment in the economy.
The reforms to pensions actually started in last year's Mansion House speech. They've been led by the Pensions Minister and will likely be signed into law in the next few months, according to Rachel Reeves. So they mainly apply to local government pension schemes and about 17 of the biggest work-based auto-enrolment pensions. If you're in a work-based scheme, your provider has likely signed up to this. And there are a couple of layers to this. The first is the creation of what are called mega funds. Between now and 2030, they want to smash a load of smaller schemes together to create these large pots of money. I interviewed the head of investment for Nest Pensions in the past, who pointed out that larger funds like the ones that exist in Australia have a competitive advantage because of their economies of scale, because of the size of them. They can invest in bigger projects across the globe because they have more funds to do so, and it's easier for them to throw big chunks of money at things and still stay within the percentage allocations that they've set out for their funds. I do think it's wise that we follow the Australian model. They're a couple of decades ahead of us when it comes to auto-enrolment, and they seem to be doing okay. And regardless of the investment thing, I think it's important that we smash funds together to reduce the administration costs. If the UK wants to increase the amount of money that people have invested in their pensions, reduce the fees, it's a certain way to end up with more money. The government hopes that this move will secure $50 billion in investment for the UK. How will that happen? Well, this is where it gets interesting. So as part of the Mansion House Accord, Reforms, Pact, whatever you want to call it now, there's a commitment to invest 10% of the pensions funds into private assets, half of which must be invested in the UK. So that's 5%. Think of it as like infrastructure projects, big scale investments in the UK. And the Accord is a promise to do this. On page 42, they highlight a time-limited reserve investment power to set asset allocation targets for DC schemes, and this gives the government power to ensure that this 5% happens. So I've got mixed feelings about this. On one hand, large international pension funds already come to the UK and invest. Australian Super announced $8 billion of further investment, and Thames Water's biggest investor was a Canadian pension fund. Clearly, international schemes see a benefit to owning UK assets, and I do wonder if Thames Water was owned by the UK public through their pensions. Would that have become the literal shit show that it is? Privatisation in the form of ownership by the public via their pensions could be the solution to us selling off essential public services to entities that see them as cash cows to be bled dry. I want better infrastructure in the UK. I want a better UK. But I don't want that at the expense of people's retirements. If you have to invest a certain chunk of a pension, and 5% is a big chunk, what happens if there are no good places to put that money? You just have to build something for the sake of it to hit the quota. The mandating of purchase of certain assets is a potential conflict with the fiduciary duty of the pension provider to maximise returns for investors. You cannot say, let's get the best return, but you have to buy this. So instead of mandating the percentages, let's give discounts and incentives to UK funds to buy UK assets instead of international funds. And let's sort out the planning issue so a pension fund doesn't need to spend 150 million quid in planning just to build something. Make the UK investment case a really strong one. If you're wondering if this is going to impact your pension or not, like I said, check out the list of pension companies that have signed up to this. And this is probably going to apply to the default funds, which are the default investment that you're given if you haven't selected your own investment through the pension provider. You can also check out the fund fact sheet to see where the fund is invested and see where your money is being spent. Okay, final bit, let's look at deregulation of the finance sector.
These are the most wide-ranging package of reforms to financial services regulation in more than a decade.
I think we hear the words deregulation and finance and everyone starts going, oh God, here we go again, financial crisis loading.
Hey, there's a bubble.
Well, the financial services industry in the UK is covered by loads of different bits of regulation. So the key question is, what exactly is being deregulated? My ability, I'm just going to point this out as well, I think it's important to be clear, my ability to comment on regulation is pretty limited, I'm no expert. I will just tell you what I found is being changed and give you my 2p on it. If there's anyone in the chat who knows compliance really well, then, put your thoughts below and I'll pin a comment. Or if there's a few of you down there, because you love having a bash of a keyboard, don't you? I'll put a pinned comment together with a few different takes. But yeah, leave that below and let's go through this now. The first bit of change is called the Senior Managers and Certification Regime Reform. This looks to me to be a reduction in the requirement of certain levels of staff to hold an annual certification, a compliance kind of check. This is to reduce bureaucracy and the time it takes to hire and move people throughout businesses. I think one thing that I'm asking is, does this create a risk up the chain of command? We've seen how damaging an unregulated individual acting badly can be for a business. I mean, shout out Nick Leeson, right? Next is the Financial Ombudsman or FOS reforms. FOS are the complaints handler of the financial services industry, and they're being shaken up a bit. So interesting, the reports talk about how there is a desire to clearly separate the activity of the FCA, the regulator, and FOS, the complaint side of it, because they want to avoid FOS acting like a quasi-regulator. They also want to put a hard cap of 10 years on complaints. I think back to the PPI scandal and how long that thing dragged on for. But I also think, shouldn't it have? What if someone doesn't know that they were missold a product and it's taken them a decade to realise? Is it fair to go, oh, sorry, mate, you missed out? Again, I don't know enough about this to comment, but I do think, if someone's been clearly missold, should there ever be a cap on them getting recourse on that? The other one I found is the cross-cutting regulatory reforms. This is just a general desire to simplify regulation to make it more internationally competitive. How quickly these reforms are going to translate into growth that the Chancellor desperately needs, I don't really know. And she needs some results soon, right? Otherwise, coming into the next budget, if she won't borrow and we're not growing, then the only thing that she'll be able to do is raise taxes. If we are looking at tax changes, I would like to ask the Chancellor to be brave and to reform taxes. I know people want a wealth tax. I personally wonder how easy it's going to be to administer that sort of tax. It's going to be a hell of a task working out what everyone owns. So instead, let's look at ineffective existing wealth taxes. Still wealth taxes, but not a brand new shiny 2% of anything above 10 million. Council tax sticks out to me. A house in Mayfair worth £100 million should pay significantly more council tax than a house in Bradford, a 3-bed semi in Bradford. At the minute, what we have is this council tax system that isn't fair at all. We should reform it and re-rate it, because you can't take the house to Monaco. Everyone can see the door right there. Whoever owns that house needs to pay the council tax. We should then scrap stamp duty because, we should scrap it on your main residence, I should say. The investment side, I'll leave that up to you. So on the main residence, we should scrap it because at the minute, if you want to move from the east of London to the west of London and buy an identical home, you pay a massive tax for that, so why would you? This kind of restriction of movement prevents growth in the UK. Stamp duty is anti-growth in that sense, and we should get rid of it. While we're scrapping stamp duties, let's get rid of stamp duty on the purchase of UK shares as well. Seems obvious if you want more people to buy them. So just to finish off, the tone in the UK at the minute can often be very negative. Honestly, I get really tired of the fact that everything I watch online is just people saying how bad it is to live where I live. I can be guilty of that sometimes. I contribute to that chat and that negativity, and I'm really trying to not feed into that mood. So today I'm going to say that while I'm sceptical of elements of the reforms and their ability to drive growth in a way that is good for the UK population, I'm genuinely happy that the Chancellor seems committed to trying to get more people invested, and I look forward to the day where I can add to that disclaimer that I have to do. A line that says, consistent investing in a well-diversified portfolio has proven to be a sensible habit if done properly. And not just sit here saying investments are risky, you could lose your money, only invest what you're willing to lose, and if you want help, go seek out the assistance of a qualified financial advisor that you probably can't afford or is too busy to speak to you. Drive safe.